Hey everyone, I'm Fiona. I'm with Mario, and today this is our third installment of Music and Frequency, our podcast, and we're going to be discussing in detail Bjork. Do you want to talk a little bit about yourself first? Introduce yourself with.
Yeah. So those of you guys who may not know me, I have I have several channels. I have one on astrology that I do with Molly, and that one's called Uranian Streams. And then I have my own channel, my own music. There's not much on it right now, but eventually I'll be putting these videos on there. And then I have one more channel, which is just my own musings, and it's kind of astrological and philosophical musings, and just getting really deep into things. And those are my three channels. And yeah, and I think that's it that I'll say.
Awesome. So yeah, we wanted to talk about Björk in detail, and since this topic is about music and frequency, we're going to be looking at the sound, the intention, looking at Björk's birth chart and her human design, and kind of putting together this big picture of who she is and what she's kind of grappling with in this lifetime, and other stuff. I actually just went to see her recently at the Chase Center in San Francisco, and I've seen her. This is the fourth time I've seen Björk, and I would say this was probably my least favorite time seeing her. It was just so big. It was just like I was sitting upstairs with my bandmate, and I think all the speakers were actually facing downward, and it was just like so much treble and high end that there was no bass in any of the mix. And I think like if we sat on the bottom floor, it would have been better. But tickets were like over $100. It was super packed, super expensive. I like that, there's everyone there seemed to be like 40 and up. It was a lot of older fans that were there. I think young people don't really know who she is. She's kind of.
I think they do to some degree. I've known people that do, that are much younger, much different, Scorpio maybe generation, or Pluto and Sag, but maybe not so much anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to note, because you talked about the high end in the concert,
Mm-hmm.
without that like low and bass frequency. And the last two, three albums are all like ungrounded. It's like Neptune unbound. There's no groundedness at all. It's all fluttery, wings of birds passing by. It's all floaty. There's no Saturnian strength to ground it.
Yeah, I noticed that like in the beginning of the concert, she had like birds chirping, which I thought was a really cool idea, and I kind of want to steal that for telepathic birds. She had like choir, she had her harpist. It was a different harpist, different than Xena. And then she had a septuplet of flautists. So it was just mostly high-end stuff. And I just remember thinking, like, even her song Venus is a Boy, I was like, oh, I really like that beat that happens in there. And then there's like these kind of bells that happen and celeste, and it was just flute in her voice, which was kind of an interesting remix, but her voice is already really high, like she's a high soprano, and then put the flute on top of that. And I think when they mic flutes, like, I don't know if there's a special way they have to do it, but these flutists were like dancing, they were moving around as they were playing. So I think they have to have like lav mics or something. But it was just kind of ear piercing. It was a little bit like, I know this venue is meant for like basketball games and stuff like that, so it's not like an actual concert venue, but it's just so big, so that's why they chose to have it there. But I think the sound there just a lot of like high pitched stuff, and it was a little bit like I don't usually wear earplugs for Bjork because she's, if they don't usually turn her too loud, but this time I had to like put my earplugs in because it was just like a little bit ear piercing. So yeah, I definitely resonate with it was very top heavy. It was very floaty, nothing kind of grounding her to, foundational structure. It was very kind of floaty. And I think this last album, Utopia, it's kind of different because she's it almost feels like it's a response to Volnicura, which came before, and that was about her breakup with Matthew Barney. I don't know if you've watched any of Matthew Barney's films. They're very, very, very experimental and kind of strange. And I've seen Drawing Restraint 9, and also what are the other films that he's done? And I remember, what were they called? Cremaster 1, 2, and 3, I think. Kind of disturbing, kind of like humans mixed with animals, and these movies would be very long. I feel like they were like 3 or 4 hours long from what I remember. It's been like over 10 years since I've watched them. Drawing Restraint 9, I think, was only like a couple of hours or 1.5 hours. So
Did you ever see Sleep by Andy Warhol?
no, I haven't.
It's like 5 hours of a guy sleeping.
Yeah, it just feels like he will film everything that happens, and there's no sense of trimming the fat. Like, what's the, like they say with composition, composing is not hard, but it's knowing what to cut out and what to leave, because oftentimes people will just put so much stuff in there, and it's like, well, is this really helping serve the narrative, moving the story forward? Or is it just like you're just trying to capture everything, kind of like, yeah, I just think it's harder to kind of make something very succinct and to the point, and very just the elements that you need, nothing extra.
Okay, so you just said everything there, and I'm going to foray for a moment because it touches upon our first video in the series, where we were questioning the intent of a piece of art. Is it to take us on a journey and then to bring us back? Is that its responsibility? Is even a better question. Because we're submitting to that domination. We're being dominated by something, by a frequency, and we're submitting to it, and we're open to it. And where is it taking us? The last album by Bjork was unlistenable. I had to turn it off halfway through. I was done. What is the intent of art? Like, becomes the question. No music is innocent, as that book that I had read when I had did my my presentation on the noise experimental music community. Like, no music is innocent. It's subjecting you. What is its responsibility? We think that we're submitting to it in order to feel something or to process something through the music and feel it through. But these artists, especially the experimental ones, what are they doing? Are they taking us anywhere that maybe we don't want to go? And if they're taking us somewhere, are they bringing us back safely? Or are they taking us somewhere to leave us there? These are just, we'll get deep into this, I think, but I'll leave it at that. And like, unless you want to add something to that, but we'll definitely be coming back to revisit that, because you just said it. You just said, where are we going? And how is she taking us somewhere? And you were like, she's not. It's too much information. It's too much different things going on. What does that do to the senses of a human?
Yeah, well, I think she's always been about cutting edge stuff and innovation, and she has to add this element of chaos and disorder in her music. It's almost like it can't just be beautiful for appreciating beauty. There has to be some sort of chaotic kind of cognitive dissonance to her music. And it's almost like like I know I keep bringing back Dr. Emoto, but it's just like music has the ability, sound has the ability, intention behind the music has the ability to repair your DNA or destroy your DNA and cause more trauma.
But you did say last time that all notes are part of the verse. So
that's true. But there's the intention behind it that's also That's the most important thing, the energy behind the music. And actually Bjork actually talked about this, is like, you know, drum machines, they say they have no soul, but that's because the composer, they didn't put their intention, their soul behind the music. And she's like, I
Ah,
put my intention behind my music. Like it's almost in your face, kind of like these are my most private feelings and emotions, and I'm, you know, putting it all out there for you to see. So I do think that like music works really well because a lot of subliminal stuff can kind of be transferred in the music. You know, it's like when we listen to music, we might not realize it, but a lot of those things are being, you know, going straight through the right brain, and it's like it's becoming part of our subconscious, unconscious minds, and that we might not realize it. But you know, I like to say that like humans are not at the top of the food chain. You know, there's all sorts of like hyperdimensional forces that are interfering and acting through us and influencing us. And if we're not like aware, if we're not sovereign to these forces, then we're going to be used as puppets, or you know, have these agendas of these occult forces come through us and act in ways that we might not realize we're being possessed or being used, or you know, being pushed to think, or being programmed in a way. So I just think that a lot of musicians and artists get their inspiration from a lot of these realms, these higher dimensional realms, these lower dimensional realms. And that's really important to, you know, looking at what kind of frequencies the music is holding. And yes, source is all of the frequencies, you know, like, but there's also like your soul has its resonant frequency, its its home key, its home note. But the most important thing is the intention behind it. That's going to kind of, you know, is this a damaging sound or is this a healing sound? Everything is going to affect, because everything is frequency. Everything in the universe is frequency.
I was making the argument last time, taken from a particular Crater Earth YouTuber, that Fibonacci sequence, for example, could be a non-human frequency in some sense. And if we take that, there's two points I want to bring to that. That perhaps there are defining frequencies that are not human, or do not really have a real affinity for our soul or nature part of us. The other factor of that, do you think that this extends over into imagery? The fact that we have that a majority of these artists are presenting in endless permutations of their physical identity, as Bjork clearly does on every album, and to the point where her image becomes mixed up in every possible endless permutation of what's not human, in order to intentionally drive home the idea that we can be anything. And why would we want to?
Right.
I mean, I mean, you're an artist, you're a musician.
Yeah.
Everyone plays with Neptune, everyone plays with the image, right?
Right. Yeah. This is very important. Her show last week or 2 weeks ago was very visual. And there was some really interesting things that I saw. Well, first of all, she was wearing a mask. She was wearing a cotton ball dress. And every time I've seen her perform, it's almost like she kind of becomes a caricature of herself. It's like I've never seen her really stripped down of just Bjork. Maybe when she was in Sugar Cubes or earlier on in her career, she kind of did she did some stuff with like face paint and stuff like that. But like it just seems like her costumes are getting more and more covering her up. And it's like, who is she? You know, why is she trying so hard to be herself? Why does she have to dress up in these extravagant costumes to kind of portray, you know, what she's trying to express? Like, why can't she just strip down and be vulnerable and show herself? Um, yeah, so it kind of makes me question, like, Does she know who she is? Is she trying on all these different costumes and these different things because it's her identity is very oceanic, it's very transformative. It's not concrete.
Um, should we visit her chart for a minute? Should we go ahead?
Yeah, let's do that.
So I'm going to start with her astrology chart, and we're going to start with kind of, okay, so Fiona knows astrology as well. We looked to better about astrology. So first thing that I saw, well, actually, let's start with you, Fiona, because you have some input to share too, and I'd like to hear your input on her astrology.
Okay, just from my own read of Bjork, she's a triple Scorpio. So I think that the Scorpio, is all about extremes, and it's kind of like this all or nothing, not into like small talk, like it has to be deep, and I think that's how she is with her music, is just fully diving into her music, almost like no boundaries, wanting to explore the entire gamut, like wanting to do everything, exploring the unknown, dealing with the depth of emotions. There's like the mysterious quality with Scorpio, I feel like. So yeah, that's what I kind of got. She's like really into like exploring the entire gamut, like, but there's the confusion about her identity, like who is she beyond her costumes? Like there's this kind of vagueness, like she could kind of take on many different personalities, depending on what she's wearing or who she's with or musicians she's with or the producers that she's working with. So it's like her identity does not seem to be the same. I feel like every album, it's like a different personality, a different person.
And so what Fiona is saying, I just want to reiterate, Fiona is saying like, and this would be, I mean, if she were here, if a fan were here, maybe, or someone who would counter that, just to create attention here, you know what I mean? So we're looking clearly at this as possible. Is it possible that the artist who expresses themselves in different permutations, is that possible that they lose themselves in the fragmentation of themselves, becoming an endless parade of imagery? Or is it also possible that an artist can play with their identity and still retain a full sense of who they are and have a balance? I think that's the tension we're dealing with here.
Mm-hmm.
The tension that we're probably going to be making an argument about it. So thanks, Fiona. Thanks for sharing that. I'm going to go right into her ascendant. So if you guys can see, her ascendant's 15 degrees. I mean, you might have to open the video up later, but so that's the second decant of Scorpio. And I'm going to read that. I'm going to read it from Alan Leo's book. This is a very detailed, like, very old book on astrology. Not very old, but this century, but an older book on astrology that goes deep into the decants. And the decants is like, for example, the first decant of Scorpio would be the first 10 degrees. The second decant would be 11 to 20. And the third would be like 20, 21 to 30. And so each sign can be split up into additional decants. But I want to read this one because, for those who don't know about Scorpio, like, it's devil or angel energy. When someone's a Scorpio and ascendant, their life can go either way. They can be an extreme metaphysician, extreme healer, an extreme transformer of reality, or they can be just the opposite, just a destroyer of reality.
Mm-hmm.
And this is and the different decants have different emphasis because of different planet rulerships. So certain planets will rule the first decant. So there's different emphasis, and sometimes there's even different views on how reality plays out, and it gets complicated. So I'm not going to read this. I may not even read this actually, because it gets deeper. Like, you have to look at certain aspects. So she's a Scorpio rising. So the first thing I would look at is her Mars, and I would see if any planet is helping her Mars cause more trouble, because Mars would be the traditional rulership of Scorpio. And so that's going to be the ruler of the chart. And so I want to look at her Mars and I want to see what it's doing. And the second thing I would look at is to see if Mars is talking to Jupiter. If Mars is talking to Jupiter, it could be an issue because Jupiter expands whatever it touches, right? And so if we have Jupiter, you know, and I'm looking at it right now, I see it for you guys that don't. There's a Jupiter in Gemini. It's late in Gemini, almost Cancer. And then we have Mars in the early degrees of Capricorn. So that's an opposition. It's at a sign. I'm sure a couple more days and Jupiter would have been in Cancer for the opposition. So it's an at a sign opposition, but nonetheless, it's still there. I'm still looking at it. So there's something off balanced possibly about who she is and how she has expressed her energy. Whether she's just done it in her music or in her life, the way Scorpio energy usually works is, or the way any energy that in a chart where someone has it for them, for who, especially on their body, on the ascendant, who they are, how all energy works, it's always dual. It's always dual. Either you own that energy or someone projects it onto you, or someone does. You do it to yourself or someone does it to you. You know what I mean? And there's like a third possibility too in that. But I won't get into that right now. So if we look at her chart, she's got Neptune on the ascendant. So first off, Neptune the dissolver. What is Neptune dissolving? Is it dissolving her? Neptune in Scorpio is very talented musically. The generation of those born in 63, 64, all these years, the year she was born, 65, all these musicians born in the early 60s, they all had this conjunction of Neptune and the moon. Or sorry, not Neptune and the moon, but they were all born with Neptune and Scorpio. And so a lot of great artists born during that time. And what I've noticed with this Neptune and Scorpio energy is it's fixed. Scorpio is like fixed fire. It's water, but it's the fixed fire version of water. It's the most powerful water there is, right? This is like oceanic consciousness contained. It is like fire water, like boiling, and it's fixed. So it's very sustained in what it is and who it is. Now on the ascendant there, it's not too far from her sun, which is her identity. And then it's close to her south node as well as her part of fortune. Now the nodes act as magnets, kind of similar to the magnetic monopole in human design. Like our chest is like a magnet that magnetizes to us what we're coming to experience in this lifetime. Same with the nodes. I mean, the nodes bring us. Now this is the past creeping up. This is the past. This is south node in Sagittarius, which means in her past lives, she was an adventurer, she was into very different expressions of religion or systems, forays into philosophy, into ideas. And so we have that south node. The north node's more Gemini. It's more like learning to be in the day-to-day, learning to be present in the day-to-day. So looking at that, again, that's Scorpio energy, like on the ascendant with Neptune and the sun. Neptune not far from the sun also indicates a Neptune-Sun conjunction, which she's actually probably pretty psychic and can see well into the metaphysical worlds, which can also make her see unclearly into the physical worlds or the seemingly physical worlds. And so there could be some inability to see things clearly. There could be a vulnerability there. With it being on her first house, it's on her body. It's directly on her identity. Like, who am I? Let me try on this mask. Let me put forth this identity. This identity is not cool enough. Look, I did it before anyone else. There could be like all that. And we'll see that in the human design as she has an open ego. But here in the astrology chart, you'll notice, we'll look real quick at the elements. I like to look at the elements. She's mostly, well, it's adding up all the outer planets. I'm only concerned with the personal planets for elements. Sun and moon in Scorpio, that's water, Mercury and fire. And then she's got 2 planets in Capricorn, there's no air. There's no air in this chart. Ironic, because her music is all airy. So it could be compensation, you know?
Mm.
Her music is not grounded. It's full of hot air, right? Floating air.
What about Jupiter and Gemini?
I don't put too much emphasis on the outer planets,
Oh,
as
that's right.
they're forces that are working through us,
Gotcha. Okay.
where the personal planets are us.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so I mean Jupiter's going to expand air for sure. But it's in conflict with Mars, her Mars and Earth. You see that opposition there I was talking about?
Mm.
So that opposition in itself is going to imbalance her temperament a little with that Mars. She's going to go overboard in her. I mean, with Mars and Capricorn, that's a lot of drive. That's a lot of ambition, right? And she's
Right.
a great artist. I mean, she's a workhorse. She's super productive, right? And how this lays out with, I mean, it's not far from Venus. I mean, so her sense, she's even industrious to her, like her style, her work of art. Like she works just as hard on her music as she does her appearance. It's right there, Venus and Mars together, you know, working to create ambitiously, you know, a front for her expression, a vehicle for expression. That's all I think I'll say on that, unless you see anything else. Yeah, when someone doesn't have an element, there's usually compensation, you
Mm.
know. They'll do it overboard. They'll say, "Oh, I don't have any air." The chart kind of overcompensates. The planet, the lone element that's missing, will overcompensate in other areas. And then I look at the south and north node to see north node in Gemini. So south node, yeah, we looked at that for a minute. So south node is in the sign of Sag, so that's fire. So actually, she doesn't have much fire either. So there's going to be, and that's kind of cool because she uses a lot of red, especially on the Volta album. It's like she had a lot of red t-shirts. I saw her on the Volta tour in New York, and it was a great show. It was a huge stadium, but the music was good. It was balanced. It was grounded. She played all her like really upbeat, intense songs, which I really loved. It was a great show, and she was really shining high in that show, very grounded. And I want to note just a couple other quick aspects. She's got Mercury conjunct. Let's see, she's got a conjunction with Mercury there. I'm trying to see, is it with Uranus? No, that's Pluto and Uranus. With her Mercury, she's. Let's see. No aspect with Mercury that I could see. I thought I was confused. I was looking at Pluto. Um, anything else? Anything else you want to add, Fiona, on this chart?
Is Mercury squared Saturn, Uranus,
Oh,
Pluto, Chiron, and midheaven? So that's like challenges around communication and you know, kind of like is the mundane, the 3D world stuff too boring for her? So she has to go super, super deep. And can she, and this goes along with the North Node in Gemini. So, you know, her, I guess what she's here to kind of learn is how can she express herself just in the day-to-day fashion, get her words across, and be more well-rounded rather than just kind of being isolated in her own Bjork world. I think it's about opening it up to how can she integrate and be more of the 3D world, and learn to communicate just in a, you know, open fashion with like a daily interaction with people, and around things that don't involve music or creativity. Because I feel like can an artist use their art, their music as a hideout? Like, this is my safe area. This is what I'm grounding through. This is where I get my power. This is my my fort of solitude. Can she actually be in the world, you know, and function without having to, you know, have all of that stuff? So I think there's definitely like a karmic challenge around communication in more just day-to-day interactions.
I mean, Fiona, you nuanced the, I mean, pivotal point. It's all right there. Saturn in the third, most difficult communicators.
Mm.
I mean, not to add what you did, all the aspects to Saturn is going to complicate that, and it'll probably trigger her back into her Neptune first house. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But I like the attempt that she makes. I mean, with the big, relationship, and you were saying that ended sadly. She's a North Node in the seventh house. Like, she's here to be in relationship with others. She's here to be in business partnerships. She's here to successfully work with the other. She's not here to be independent and escape and be isolated. That's not her purpose. And it's really hard because people are fickle. You know what I mean? It's hard to find. And it's the work, it's her work for this lifetime. North Node in the seventh house in Gemini.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, her relationship with Matthew Barney, I think, was her longest relationship, but she's worked with a lot. She's had relationships with a lot of the people that she's worked with musically. And so it's interesting right now with her last two albums. So with Volnicura and with Utopia, she was working with this producer, trans producer, Arca, and she called Arca like her sister. It was almost like a kind of a soul karmic kind of agreement with this producer. I checked out some of Arca's personal stuff, and it's very satanic. Like, the video time was like her like hooking up with the devil. And there's this point in the music video where she has this red laser coming out of her left eye, and the devil is like drinking in that red laser out of her left eye. And so left eye, from my knowledge, is like your receptivity, it goes straight to your heart. When you look at someone in their left eye, from my knowledge, it's like you're going straight to their heart. So the fact that she's having the devil like drink this laser coming out of her left eye, yeah, it's just kind of creepy.
Kind of?
Kind of creepy.
It's just happening so much these days. I mean, you know what I mean? We're not going to segue to other artists, but like, one wants to ask, like, where's the music industry that's controlled? Where are they attempting to divert our energy to and from? Where are they taking us? Where are they wanting to take us? Because it's not home.
Right.
It's not from here and back home. It's somewhere else. It's not a human frequency is what I'm getting more and more every day. Like, it's some other frequency, and it's not us. And it's fascinating what Fiona said about the eye, because the eyes is the cliche, the window to the soul, right?
Yeah.
There's something to that. And there's things in our eyes, like there could be entities in the eyes that you could see. Um there's family members that could be soul spirits that could still be there, guiding and protecting, could be seen there. I mean, it's fascinating stuff. And why is she covering it up? What is she thinking that she's protecting? The last vestiges of her real identity? I mean, with someone who needs to dress themselves up in every possible permutation to be the best at what she does, which she clearly is. I mean, I don't know any other artist that even can compare
Right.
with the level of I don't know, just presentation that she does. And then in combination with her unique soprano voice, I've never seen anything that I wanted to compare with her. I mean, there's certain female singers I love, like Lisa Gerard, who has her own unique, intense style. And I really like 70s doom metal style with a lot of the female fronted vocals. It's amazing stuff. But there's different singers, in that genre. And but there's no one like her. You know, that's her style is just very much hers. But what has it become? What has happened?
Mm, yeah, I just know that like at the show, at the concert, the visuals were very like transhumanism, AI, like plants consuming human bodies, humans that were like burnt machine. There was like this tentacle parasite creature that kind of reminded me of the parasite that goes in Neo's belly button in the Matrix. And it's like this tentacle creature that's like wrapping around this human body and consuming it. Um, and this at one point, this ball of fire, I don't know if it was supposed to represent COVID. Is it like, and then like the people that were the dancers, their souls like kind of floated off. I mean, it was really kind of dark and like, oh my gosh, is she kind of, is she aware of what she's doing? Is this kind of, you know, is she responsible for all of this, that what she's kind of creating visually? Is it a representation of how she's kind of perceiving everything? Is she trying to kind of give off this frequency? I just know that like after that show, it just felt like it was very, you know, like when I went to the Craneway Pavilion and I saw her, that was such an intimate show. It was a circular stage. The sound was great. She had Mike Patton singing with her. She had her choir. She had the Tesla coil things there. Xena was playing harp there. And it was just like a small, intimate concert. And I feel like that was really the pinnacle of all the times I've seen her. Just the music sounded great. And then this was just, it was just so dark and so like, and then she had Greta Thunberg talk. Like she had like a
Thunder,
video.
Thunderberg.
Under there's this video of Greta singing heavy metal and
She's a good death metal singer. She did get on that song. The chorus was "How dare you," because everybody knows that one.
right, yeah, so it was just interesting. She had a video of Greta kind of talking during, I think this was right before her towards the end of the concert. And you know, she's kind of telling us, lecturing us about like not to drive or feel guilty about driving your gas car, and you know, you should be using green energy and all this stuff. But it just felt like a religion. It felt so culty and so like, you know, I think that like if anyone's kind of scratches the surface, they're going to see beyond what this agenda is really about, you know. And I don't think any of that stuff is really meant to help the environment. You know, it's meant to kind of get people to pay more taxes and stuff and have more control over people. What's this whole thing with electric cars? Like, I think any car like made after a certain date, they're going to make it so that they can shut it down. But you know, it's just like I like my gas car. I like that, you know, even with telepathic birds, our generators, the battery operated one is not good compared to our gas one. It's the gas generator is so much more reliable. It lasts like 5 times longer. And the battery one, you know, it dies after 2 hours. And I think like I heard my friend talking about like one of his friends can't drive the Prius anymore because of the battery kind of creates this vibrating kind of thing, and it kind of gets absorbed into the body, like this vibration that comes from the battery. So, and then just battery, you know, like you think about like a car that uses gasoline, it's like metal and parts, but you think about the electric batteries, that has all sorts of weird chemicals in it that are not good for the environment. And I'm thinking like, if you really want to help the environment, why don't you start planting some trees? Why don't we clean up the ocean, you know, instead of like punishing people for using their gasoline cars and stuff like that. And the whole carbon thing, I feel like carbon is plant air, you know, it's you know, I feel like we're kind of going after this thing that's like, you know, we should be planting trees. We should be, you know, doing beach cleanups and stuff like that. I just feel like what we're going for is not really to help the environment. If we really look beneath the veil, it's about something else.
So I'm gonna do two things. I'm gonna contrast what you're saying a little,
Okay.
just because the truth is somewhere in the middle. I mean, it's true everything you said. Yes, like there's obviously an agenda being pushed forward, and it just makes no sense because like there's nothing wrong to some degree with the way we've been doing things, but at the same time, it's like there's technology, you know, we've had all this digital technology, right? All this like anti kind of analog in a sense, but there is a permutation occurring and there is a metaphysical consequence on some level because regardless of whether we like it or not, like they're shutting down everything that's analog. I mean, they're shutting it down. Like we're not even going to be able to buy gas generators in like a year. I mean, this stuff is happening. You know, they're shutting down like the way we've used animals in the past. Like that's changing, you know, and it's not even an ideological thing, you know, like I like my paleo diet, you know, but that's going to be less and less available. Just it's almost like a consequence of the abuse of animals. You know what I mean? That you and I may not be directly responsible for, you know, but on some level, there's been an agenda to farm animals, you know, and apparently torture them for some purpose, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and how much different are we than animals, you know? Like, I mean, there is difference, obviously, in terms of incarnations and this and that, but you know, that's just kind of a different density of it. So I'm gonna agree with you. Yeah, of course. Like they're promoting a harvest agenda of harvesting of human souls, but at the same time, like we have to remember that our spirits don't grow without opposition. We
Mm.
don't grow as humans, as spirits, without adversity. The adversity is what wakes us up, you know, and what like helps us penetrate through the Neptunian illusions that are being brought forth. And it helps us see the clues and get to where we need to get because it's not we don't live just to be. We live to see if we can figure out where we came from and get back. So the music we want to listen to is the music that reminds us of where we're truly from,
Mm.
thus taking us from where we already are, taking us somewhere and bringing us back stronger. Is that not the whole like movement of what human purpose and spirit is, you know? At some point we lost our memories, right? In our incarnation cycles. We don't know what happened. So we need to be taken somewhere to remember, to get back what we've lost, to remember ourselves, you know. And then a last segue real quick is, and it's kind of off, but I didn't get to it. So with the Scorpio Ascendant, it's 15 degrees. Now, initially the Scorpio Ascendant, the first decon is pretty strong in its expression. I mean, it's all Scorpion themes, and I want to read that real quick. It's I guess I was waiting too long, so I lost some of it, but let's see, it should be right here. Okay, here we go. So I mentioned a little, we have to know Mars, the position, what's going on in the eighth house, um, how Mars is doing in the chart. In her chart, we know there's an opposition, and it's the second decon. So it can be it could be afflictive for this specific decon, this specific person. And then she's very successful. So that's something that's she had enough, you know what I mean, like background in music support and what she was learning in life. And the second decon is accentuating all the extremes of the first. So even more to the extremes. So her life could be, you know, I mean, there's a nature of being reserved, shrewd, secretive, and a proud disposition that could be fed by like an open ego in her human design that, you know, never thinks she's good enough.
Mm.
You know, there's some kind of hole there that she might be trying to fill by her ambition, her endless ambition and endless seek to like manifest new faces of it, you know, to the extreme where like she has no competitors as we've discussed,
Right.
or none, not even close. And here it says, let's see, so this is Scorpio rising in general. I like to say angel or devil energy. I mean, this is someone who can be very powerful and change and transform and be mystical, and can also, be extremely ignorant and deceitful and treacherous in their expression, highly controlled. Um, yeah, this is one extreme or the other, and she could very well, and Fiona would know this better than anyone else if Fiona got to look at her hands. But the question becomes, is she a person who herself, with that Neptune on the ascendant and being a Scorpio, a triple Scorpio, is she here to experience both sides of that dynamic? Is she here to experience what it is to allow evil to flow through her, And what is evil but a negation of the self? That's all it is, what you're not, but represented as who you are. So is she here to experience a loss of the self so she can come back to herself? Is the journey go both ways? Is she circling back? We'll see. But it's a good question. With that moon in the 12th, she doesn't want to be in the world. She doesn't want to be in the world. It's too much for her. Too sensitive. The moon is the deepest heart. She doesn't want to be exposed. She'd rather mask.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so I just wanted to touch on that Scorpio rising because it's not easy. I'm not trying to oversimplify it. I mean, she's got 2 planets there. Her south node, Scorpio's in 15 degrees, so it's a second decon, which is even more intense. She's got her ruling planet opposing Jupiter, and this chart's not showing the aspects, any other aspects to Mars, but I don't see any right now that I can underscore. But yeah, let's let me turn this off so we can go to human design eventually if we feel like it. What do you think of what I said in terms of her maybe even being like a such an artist that she can go away from herself and maybe even come back? I mean, that Scorpio is strength, Scorpio is strength. It's the strongest.
Yeah,
Water.
I do see that with her. I think that I actually, when I went to Iceland, one of my friends lives like 7 houses down from her in the fancy area of Iceland. I remember he said that she had her house was painted black at one point, and it was kind of interesting because someone that's so creative, but also, and then I remember watching a video of like her inside her house, and it was almost like it was empty. There was like nothing inside. And I don't know if that's just because she's just never at home, probably that maybe why, but it just seemed like her personality, her soul, like it just didn't match up with the house that she was living in. It was almost like the house was like completely different representation. It just looked kind of plain. I mean, she painted it white because I think the rain made it look kind of gray. So yeah, I just thought that was
I thought it was black. What do you mean? I thought it was black.
Her house, yeah, her house was painted black in Iceland, and then she painted it white. And I think that's, my friend said it was because of the rain kept like making the paint look like it was gray, because Iceland, the weather is just really unpredictable. Like, one moment you'll have rain, one moment it'll be sunny, one moment it will be hailing, one moment it'll be super windy. So it's like you can't really predict the weather in Iceland. And so I don't know, there's just this, like, it was almost like her living space was just very plain compared to her personality, which I thought was kind of interesting. And I remember, Bjork has kind of talked about Iceland as being a place of that's given her a lot of influence for her music, just because the nature, people can die in Iceland very easily. Like a cliff can fall on you, or rocks can fall on you, or like I remember driving on the dirt roads to eat from Reykjavik to Isafjord, and it was just like you could those roads are very dangerous. They're right by the ocean. You could just like fall right off. And there's this element of kind of sudden outbursts, like the geysers, the geysers, the volcanoes, like explosions that kind of happen. And I kind of noticed that just with her. Do you remember, I don't know if you watched, like, she was there's a video of her where she attacked one of the reporters in Bangkok, and you could kind of tell she was like ready to attack. She was like, pushing the cart with her kid. And then the lady's like, oh, welcome to Bangkok. And then Bjork like loses her shit and like is like, yeah, attacking this woman. This like explosive energy in her. Yeah, sorry, what was the question?
No, I'm lost now. I was like, but not lost in a bad way. Like, where are you taking me? Like, this is good.
Oh,
Because you're hitting now on what I forgot, what we haven't yet discussed, which is, what did I ask? I asked you, what did you think of me saying that she's like a person that can lose herself in the dark side and negate herself and maybe even come back to herself and lose herself again? Like, it's extremes. Scorpio's extremes, of course,
yeah. Oh yeah. I just know that like in our music, why, like I'm trying to look at like why she brings in these like uncomfortable moments. Like it's almost like bringing in danger into her music, this discordant, this kind of chaotic, these noise things. And I do think her music, like if she brings in too many elements, she wants to be innovative, she wants to bring in the latest technology, she wants to have her choir, she wants to have harpists, she wants to have flautists, a flute ensemble, and visuals and everything. I feel like something kind of gets lost in the complexity of everything. It's like everything's kind of competing for, what am I supposed to listen to here? Is there a foreground? Is there a midground? Is there a background? Or is everything kind of up in the foreground? And it kind of seems that like, especially her last two albums, where it's just, there's just so much going on. And it's like, I want to kind of, and that could be the same thing with the costumes of covering herself up, having to putting so much of that energy into her music, and like, oh, if it becomes more simplified, then I'm losing something, or I'm not going to convey the emotion that I need to. But it's this interesting song in Utopia called The Gate, and that's the most simple song that's on that album, and that's probably my favorite because it's like parallel fifths and her voice, and I think it's just like a simple like flute pattern, and it's so stripped down, and I'm almost like, wow. But she's going for these extremes. Like she'll go through this bombastic, like use every single instrument, cover the whole sonic spectrum, every single timbre. She'll gather all these field recordings and stuff like that, and bombard you with all of that. And then the next song will be this like totally stripped down, intimate, her voice and like two flutes or something like that. And so it's kind of interesting this, but I definitely prefer her more intimate, stripped down songs. I love Cocoon. I love Pagan Poetry, Bachelorette, Oceana, the stuff that is, it has a clear sense of what is in the foreground. The melody really sticks with you. It's really intimate. There's not a bazillion things happening at once. I just think sometimes when it gets a little too glitchy and a little too noisy, it's almost like it's too much stimulation for my brain, and my brain's just like, what the hell is this? And coming from me, I was a huge Bjork fan. I've known her since I was like 15, and I was introduced to her by my first music soulmate. He was just like, oh, she looks Asian, she looks, like, but it's weird also because in Iceland, you have a lot of these Nordic people that are blonde haired, blue eyed, pale skinned people. And then you have Bjork, who looks like she's Asian. Like, and I know that I don't know if it's her dad or her stepdad was an electrician, but I guess her dad left her life when she was like 4 years old or something like that. And so she was raised by her mom and her stepdad. Her stepdad was a musician as well. And so Björk had this fascination with electricity because she said her father was an electrician, but I don't know if that's her real dad or her stepdad. And she did mention, like, you put your intention into the music, because she was kind of on the forefront of a lot of this electronic music and using beats, especially working with a lot of hip hop artists, beat makers. A lot of that rap music and hip hop kind of gets in electronic music. It kind of deemed as being non-emotional or has no soul. But really, if you have an element of an acoustic instrument along with an electronic instrument, that's where you can get that soul. Like I know that like drum machines, in my sound healing class, it's like drum machines can be very harsh, but if there's another element that's non-mechanical, it can change it drastically. And it was very interesting what you said about making everything digital, so getting rid of analog. I'm kind of curious about that too. Because analog is, you know, the waveform of analog is smooth, whereas anything that's digital is going to be, you know, angular and sharp. And you know, we hear analog when we listen to tapes or reel to reel or vinyl, but we lose that once we go digital, like listen to CDs, because we have that audio or analog to digital conversion that happens, that has to turn everything into bits and sample rates. So it's kind of like we kind of lose the soul of music. And it's interesting because you know, like the Rife machine, you have to find the one that's analog, right? You can't just use a digital. I mean, if you're trying to create a an oscillator sound that's not analog, it's not going to have the same healing potential. I think that like our body, like analog just is more in alignment with nature. It's reflected in nature, versus digital is kind of like an alien energy.
Yeah, that was a lot, Fiona. That was great. You just opened it up again, because that aspect of what is music doing? And so I wanted to touch on this, and we had talked about this a little. With Scorpio energy, you have like a sometimes it's it can be a hypnotic frequency, an addiction energy, right? So sometimes when I do charts for people, you know, so we're sharing the screen because my audio is not working too well. So I decided to share Bjork's human design. Fiona just touched on a lot of issues surrounding you. The last thing you said, Fiona, I think, was that the frequency, what she's doing. Oh man, I lost it now. It was talking about how, oh yeah, digital versus analog, right? Right. And how digital technology has um, analog has a waveform movement, and its waves are like very nice or something, expressed in a certain, whereas you were saying digital is kind of like rocky.
Yeah, it's very angular and sharp, whereas analog is smooth. You have the smoothness of the audio of the waves, versus like digital sound wave is very, you know, it can't be circular because it's bit depth plus sampling rate. So it's like it kind of mimics the picture, but it's not exactly. And so people will say like analog sounds warmer, digital sounds a little bit more harsh. So you have to actually add noise back to the sound, usually when you're mastering a song, just to kind of give it that warmth that it's lacking.
Okay, so I wanted to bring up in relation to that the frequency of this. Let's look at the astrology chart and the human design like a kind of song in itself. Let's propose that for a moment. If the chart represents, you know, her a triple Scorpio, that's a certain sound frequency. If we go with rulerships, as Scorpio ruling certain notes, right? So then when I do a chart for someone who has a lot of Scorpio energy, what I always look at is there's a very strong hypnotic frequency that sometimes can come off as attracting obsession or being obsessive oneself. So if a Scorpio is in balance, then the obsession will be something either projected upon them, or it'll be something outside of them that's attracted to them, or they will embody it completely, you know, or to a certain degree. Obviously, there's that with Bjork. I mean, there's an obsession with identity. There's a nonstop theme of identity, and to the extreme where like we've questioned already her identity in many levels. And she actually had a stalker. She had an obsessive stalker that was after her for a while and did some kind of bomb, or what did he do?
Yeah, he filmed himself, or he mailed a bomb to her London house, and then he also filmed himself killing himself. So, an obsessed fan. And she's like, people shouldn't take me too seriously. I just make music. But I think that she has a big responsibility with the music that she's making. I think that, like,
Just make music. No music is innocent.
no music is innocent.
No music, and she does have a big responsibility, even bigger for how big she is. I'm going to say a couple of things about her chart real quick. So for those of you into human design, she's a manifesting generator. Manifesting generators, they don't really need people. She has her north node though in the 7th house, which means she does. She's here for partnership. She's here to work it out. She's got the 3420 that segues up, that black gate. She's a workhorse. She doesn't stop. She doesn't know how to stop. She doesn't know how to not work. She's got ambition. She's got concentration. She's got this 18 to 58. I'm sure she's a perfectionist. She's got the 18 unconscious in line with so probably problems with the mother, probably issues with the mother growing up. Was there any issues? You spoke about a stepdad. What was the
Uh,
relationship with the mom?
she hasn't really talked much about her mom, her relationship with her mom. I remember they did like this interview with they talked to the mom, and the mom was, I think maybe the mom was a little bit unemotional. That's what I kind of get from her mom, like
And
unavailable
she's moon in Scorpio, so that would have been a mother who's
or overbearing, or I don't know. It just seemed like the mom was kind of like, she was smoking a cigarette, and she was just kind of like, oh, how does it feel to have your daughter, being so big? And she was kind of like,
um
yeah.
yeah, it's not, the mood is not comfortable. The mother is not comfortable in Scorpio. The nurturing is not there. If
Mm-hmm.
anything, it could be some form of violence, you know, or
Mm-hmm.
just a violent temperament she
I
was
mean,
exposed to.
putting Bjork in music school at age 5, to study at this conservatory seems a bit much. I mean, I started piano lessons when I was young, but it wasn't like a conservatory where it was just like, because Bjork was like studying, all the composers and everything. And so Bjork had her own rebelliousness against that. She's like, oh, I didn't want to learn about those composers, but she's like, I like that I got into Stockhausen and Schoenberg and all these, modern composers, because it kind of, even though it wasn't her cup of tea, she's like, oh, it was good that I knew that they were doing what they're doing, because it kind of gave her permission to kind of go do her own thing.
Yeah, and I mean, like you do, you know what I mean? You've had a really good musical education, so you can play all you want, in the realms of contrast that she does. She's open ego, endlessly trying to prove herself. She can never get rid of the feeling that she's not worthy or is not enough. Although it's not something that needs to get rid of, it's just how she's conditioned by her environment. But whether
Right.
she comes to those terms or not is up to her.
Yeah, so it's going to be like this void in her that she's constantly trying to fill through validation from her music. Like, how does she trying to fill that? Because I feel like she goes over the top, like with Volnicura, that was like her breakup album. It was almost like painting Matthew Barney as the evil one, like he did all this to me, and he, like, a lot of projection. And then she was kind of painted as, oh, the victim. He left us, he abandoned the family, he was unavailable. And so it was a little bit of kind of like projecting onto him. And maybe she had seen him, put him on a pedestal. Your relationships are kind of a barometer of where you are with your self-work and your awareness.
Person's worth is who they attract.
Yeah, exactly.
Or value, or you know what I mean? Where like, I mean, that's probably especially true for, well, I don't want to get into it. So yeah, so anyways, open ego, open emotional center, like she's capable of emotional extremes. I'm open emotional. I think you are too. It's just we're conditioned by our atmosphere so we can feel all emotions. We're here to feel all emotions, you know, and it's not necessarily us, you know, it's just what's being amped up in us. And that's it. She's defined mentally. Her mind doesn't stop. She's constantly writing, creating, you know, workhorse again. She has a G center. She has a sense of who she is. She doesn't need a group. Although she's plugging into something that's quite evident, you know, I think she's carrying around an umbilical cord and plugging it into whatever this gigantic Neptunian mass hypnosis is trying to, you
Mhm.
know, to spread, you know. She's got if you look at gate 28, she's got the red and black there. That's an overlay. She's only got one. She's not very aware.
Mm.
She's not very aware about what she's doing.
Mm.
Usually the more overlays, the more awareness. Oh, I'm doing this. Oh, it doesn't mean you could stop it, but you can see yourself doing it. Very self-reflexive.
Yeah,
She doesn't even have that. Just one. Go ahead.
she was just saying how the government is good, like that they stepped in, and she was kind of like, I was like, whoa, okay. In an article that I read.
Yeah, and she's an MG manifesting generator. The thing about manifesting generators, very selfish beings. I mean, especially the 2034, very just kind of self-absorbed. Sometimes she's a 5-1, a lot of projection on who she is. I don't know if she can handle fame very well, to be honest. 5-1s are paranoid already about how people perceive them, and there's expectations put upon them. There's like a, with a 5-1 profile, there's like a field and it's projection. So you can't even see who someone is. Like a 5-1, you can't really see their core. They don't share their core with others. Very private, like connect with very few people. Just they're not easy to know. You
Mm.
know, natural leaders though, Ra Ruhu, the founder of Human Design, 5-1. Um, but yeah, this is with that Neptune in the ascendant, I keep going back to that because that's like the hole in the chart. You know, that's the dissolver. That's, you know, a certain point in the chart where we have someone who is has a sense of self that is not readily clear or apparent, you know, at least to us. We don't know her, but this is kind of what we're getting.
Mhm.
Anything else? Any last things you want to add, Fiona?
Yeah, no, I just think this really reflects the all or nothing kind of thing that she is about, just the extremes, the workhorse part of her. And yeah, that she's come here to actually be more balanced and, not always be all or nothing, but like, can she be somewhere in the middle? Is that okay? Or is she going to like lose her sense of identity? Does it have to be all or nothing? It's like with composers these days, they have to look for the latest, the most new thing to do. And it's like, is that really making it sound better? Is twirling your belly button and making fart sound, or I don't know, just, it's like the most innovative thing, like really going to be, I don't know, maybe it's the deepest expression of yourself. But I'm just like, there's so many tools and things that she uses, and it's like the when she was just singing with voice and like harp or voice and flute, I felt like that was getting to her core a lot more. But those songs are so rare, it's much more likely that she does a really complex, like busy, lots of textures, lots of timbres, lots of instrumentation. So when she does do those stripped down songs, it's like, oh, that's the Bjork. That's her.
Yeah.
Like I get a glimpse of who.
Beautifully said. Great catch on that. That's true. Because when I hear her stuff like that, it's so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
It's so epic. It's just, you can just feel her soul in the music. You could feel her spirit. And it's just such an attractive voice. I mean, it's such a ethereal sound. I mean, Lisa Gerard has her own version of that, but Bjork's is like, but even in a way, it's kind of like a child that's never grown up.
Mm-hmm.
That voice, right? It's super high.
Yeah.
It almost puts me in my parental brain just to listen to that music. Like it has an effect, I think. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's so is it a siren song or is it a muse song? If we look at the Greek myths, is she a siren? You know, or maybe she's a siren at times, you know?
It's hard to say. I feel like she can kind of do both. I see her just playing many characters, embodying many different archetypes. Um, Talking about her voice, though, she does tend to sing very nasally and in her throat.
Oh,
Like, I
really?
remember I had a choir teacher in high school listen, because I was like, "Can you listen to Bjork? She's like one of my favorite singers." And she's like, "Oh my God, like how does she not lose her voice?" Like, I think Bjork may have had vocal nodes in the past, but like the way she's singing, it's like she's screaming. But I do know she does breathe a lot. She does the diaphragmatic breathing, which is really important. So if you are going to scream, you want to make sure, you know, like how dogs bark and they never lose their voice, or like how babies can cry and scream and they don't lose their voice. It's like the same muscles, the diaphragmatic muscles, and then the deep breathing. And I do notice that she does that. So there is a lot of like oxygen and power kind of working through her, even though the sounds I feel like are very wide and in her throat. And she does these like guttural kind of like sounds that are not what most vocalists try to avoid doing, because it like is kind of harsh on the vocal cords, where she will just kind of go through it and kind of make these like really intense grunting and kind of gargly sounds. But I think it's kind of part of the introducing this the more dissonant quality, the noise quality into her sound, because she has an amazing range. Like she actually sang Schoenberg's Pierre Lunaire, and it sounded really beautiful. I mean, his Schoenberg's music is meant to be serial atonal, but the way she sings it, there's just a lot of expression behind it. And I do agree with you on the childlike sound to her voice. There's definitely this, it's almost like the voice is, it's very powerful. Her voice is very powerful. It's so recognizable. Like if I hear her voice, I can tell it's her. It's so unique.
Right.
Um, so
I
yeah.
want to I want to share one last thing that I love that you said, and it was when you questioned her own sense of identity. You asked the question, can she, what was it? Can she relate on a human level where she doesn't have to ground into the energy of herself as a musician? In other words, can she be secure as a human being without bringing her music to safeguard her or protect her? And I
Mm,
love this because, like, you know, when we go out into the world, like, no one gives a fuck that I'm an astrologer or that you're a musician. They give a fuck that you're a human right there. And are you connecting or not? Are you looking them in the eye? Are you being human? Are you being authentic?
mhm.
Are you present? Are you experiencing what they're experiencing?
Right.
I just want to underscore that because, like, even myself, I get caught up in that because I love the universal language of astrology. And
Mhm.
I love to nuance everything with that view. And well, of course I do. I mean, that's where I'm comfortable. That's where I'm safe.
Yeah.
You know, why not shade everything in that? Because that's not, you know what I'm saying? That's just what I enjoy. That's not my essence of self. That's just a fucking tool that I use to interpret, nothing more.
Yeah. Yeah. You as a spirit, you as a soul, your life purpose transcends circumstances. It should be, you should be you no matter what the circumstances are. You shouldn't need to be in your element. I mean, yes, that does enhance it, but like she should be the passionate artist, even when she's going to the grocery store. I mean, she can embody that. You know, she may not have to be in front of a stage in front of 15,000 people or whatever, 80,000 people, but like she can still embody that. She doesn't have to always be in her safe space. I think that we just need to embody that energy, carry it around no matter what happens or where we are, who we're with. You know, we could still have that
Yeah.
time.
Do you think it's impossible for famous musicians or just famous celebrities to do this?
It depends on what their intention is and how aware they are. I feel like a lot of it kind of, you know, are they able to be true to themselves, or is there some other force acting behind them? I think that like most people that have gotten really big, I kind of question, you know, where they're getting their money from, what kind of message, what kind of frequency are they pushing? Because usually artists that are really big in the spotlight, there's some sort of, they might have sold their soul, you know, in a way for the fame, for the recognition, for the money. With Bjork, she has natural talent, so it's like that on top of all the, you know, fame and stuff that she's gotten. So it's like a double whammy of like being super powerful, so she has, and super different, you know. So I feel like a lot of people do have this obsessive thing with Bjork, like, oh, she's so unique, she really expresses what I'm feeling inside, there's only one of her, she's so, you know, and the whole worship thing like you talked about. So I just think that how true can she be to her own life purpose and her own evolution, and also know that she is in a powerful position and she has a lot of responsibility because there's a lot of people that are kind of looking up to her.
Yeah, you mentioned that. And again, yeah,
Yeah.
I just wanted to underscore that last part, which is it's not a light thing, you know, to be an taint, you know, or just, you know what I mean, or someone who celebrates life with others. I mean, what else is a musician? You know, you're celebrating the journey.
Right. Yeah. And remember, no sound is innocent.
That's going to be our endless refrain, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Thanks so
Awesome.
much. Yeah. Thanks for always having me and me having you there.
Yeah, thank you, Mario. If people want to get in touch with you, they can, I'll put the links below. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, you can just post them in the comments. So
yeah, thanks so much everybody for listening.
awesome. All right, we'll see you later.